Hello, it's your friendly neighborhood buffhead here. So, a couple of my options for today that really piqued my interest were the religious impulse and weddings/marriage, and also why I am going to an Orthodox church, and also what listening to Jonathan Pageau has done for me. So what am I going to talk about? Well, sometimes you just got to pick one, don't you? I'm going to talk about this religious impulse because just as with my explanation of the idea that you might be able to be with anyone, although obviously that's got many caveats. You can watch the video. I'll link it at the end. I'll even maybe try and link it here. You can watch it here. Who knows? Maybe that'll work. I'm not very good at this YouTube technology stuff yet. But I want to talk about, I was having a discussion with a friend, and he came from a bit more of a conventional view that religion and government should be separate. He's a French person, so that makes sense because they really try and do that. And he kind of viewed being spiritual views, I assume. I don't think I changed his mind. And I'm not sure I'd want to. But he viewed being spiritual as something separate, both from religion and from the political. And I was trying to explain my position on religion or the religious impulse. And I found it really hard. So I'm going to try and explain to you now that I've had a little more time to dwell on it. Also now that I can speak in English, because I was trying to do it in French, and I'm just not that good at French. So my position on religion, or maybe on the religious impulse, which is maybe slightly different, or it feels good to say the words religious impulse rather than religion, in order to separate those terms out a little bit, because as soon as you say religion, most people are going to think you mean organized religion, and so I'd like to start by removing myself a bit from that word and talking about, really I'd like to talk about the religious. What is that? The religious. Because my definition of the religious is very far removed from organized religion. So my definition of the religious basically comes from Jung, C.G. Jung, and also from, it's elaborated a bit or changed a bit by the work of Jonathan Pageau, who I've listened to a lot lately. And so for me, the religious is the frame through which you see everything. Now, there are a lot of people who say you see everything through your political lens, and the political and the religious are certainly becoming closer these days. A lot of people's religious view, the religious for many people is deeply linked with their politics, which I don't know very much about, but I'm skeptical about doing that, about allowing your party's views or even like your community's views really to become the entirety of how you see the world, although obviously to some extent it's inevitable. But yeah, for me, the religious has little directly to do with prayer or with getting together and singing, even though those are wonderful or useful rituals for formulating a really deep understanding of the religious, a deep religious attitude, let's say. For me, the religious is just the biggest frame that you can conceive of, and the biggest frame you operate in regularly. because things can sort of break into your religious frame, and that's what happens when people sort of lose God or find God or something, like that. Maybe they'll leave the church and say, no, I've just realized God's not real, or the opposite, like be atheists and have an intense experience and be like, oh, I've known God, I know that God exists, I got to start going to church, or just believing in God, whatever that means to those people. And so that's why I say it's the biggest frame you can really, biggest frame you deal with regularly, because there's kind of always something bigger. Although I think old Johnny Pajot might argue that the Christian religious frame provides for the bigger frame, and probably other religious systems do, old ones, because they've had time to really establish themselves and try and iron out some of the problems and undergo a process of deep evolution. And so, yeah, for me, religious is the biggest frame you can operate in. In other words, and it feels important to mention the way I see the world, which is through a psychological lens, I believe. I know Jordan Peterson talks a lot about the fact that your values cause the world to announce itself to you in certain ways. So you will find salient the things that you value, essentially. So classic example is like you buy a new car of a brand that you weren't used to, or you buy a new thing of that brand. Suddenly you can see the brand everywhere. It's like, whoa, this brand's suddenly super popular. And it's because you're seeing it where before you could ignore it because it just wasn't relevant. That also touches on relevance realization, which is the Vervaekean concept, which is sort of deeply interlinked with all this, I would say. So hit up John Vervaeke as well for these ideas. Ooh, my washing's ready. BRB. But yeah, since my experience and my reading suggests to me that what I value is what will become salient to me. So sort of internally established values. And it's worth clarifying that sometimes you say you believe in one thing and you don't really, or you say you value something and you don't necessarily live that out. You don't necessarily experience the world that way. Trying to think of an example. Maybe, for example, I used to say I was really looking to be good, to be the best person I had to do, and to do the best I could see. I was trying to make the world a better place, rah-de-rah. And in fact, in many ways, I wasn't. There was a large part of me that was trying to actually make the world worse, or make my life worse, or it was just bitter. I just had this big pile of bitterness sitting somewhere in me, and that caused the world to announce itself to me as hostile and horrible in many ways. That wasn't the only experience I had, but that was a big part of my experience, and it took a real conscious self-examination and reassessment of the world when I was in my early 20s. I'm in my late 20s now. I'm 27. In my early 20s, where I sort of had to realize that actually a lot of me was pointing down, as Jordan Peterson might say, was aiming down, was aiming at making things worse, not better. I had to notice that, and then, which was a big, well, it was kind of like a slow epiphany. I really only realized that I had realized it later. But first I had to, notice the darkness in myself, maybe confront or integrate my shadow a little bit, although I'm always doing that, and we all are if we feel we're progressing through life, probably. we can talk about the shadow in some other video, but you can probably get better descriptions of it by other people. It's a very trendy thing to talk about on YouTube, integrating the shadow. It's a Jungian concept. It's all the things that you push under your psychological rug for one reason or another, that you avoid identifying with or thinking about or expressing. And a lot of that's gold. That's something that was a Jungian insight. He often talked about the golden shadow, which is all the good stuff in there, I think. Anyway, I had to go through some shadow work, we could say. But yeah, I had to realize that I was not in fact aiming at goodness, and then start really sort of sincerely and therefore more vulnerably trying to make the world better. So I would, it's quite scary really aiming at being good, because you have to be, well, part of what helped me, again, a Jordan Peterson thing, he says, don't lie. What is it? Tell the truth, or at least don't lie. But I started being really honest, and that started with being honest with myself, which is really hard, and that's what helped me realize that I had been lying to myself about exactly how hard I was trying and exactly what I was aiming for, because I was really aiming to prove the world a hostile place or something. I was trying to show my bitterness in a sort of subtle way. I was trying to seem like someone who was trying their best, who was just getting beaten over and over by the world. And people really saw it that way. It was an effective farce. I mean, I didn't realize it was a farce until I'd done it for quite a while. And I didn't consciously realize that it was a farce until I'd ameliorated, I'd resolved that farce for some time. Like, I didn't realize it until, maybe a year or two later, after I'd started trying to really, trying more sincerely to be good, to live a genuinely good life. But anyway, yeah, I had to first first see the darkness, and then truly aim at the light before the world started announcing itself to me according to the values that I had pronounced with my mouth the whole time, but I had not pronounced with my heart. I should probably make a full video on that transformation, but maybe I can even just cut that little bit out and call it my transformation. That'd be cool. So back to the religious impulse, and the religious more generally. So all that considered, and one more thing I've got to talk about is frames to explain this, I suppose. So a great person to go to learn about frames is John Vervaeke. He's got this series called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, where he goes through quite rigorously what the religious is and what a frame is. So a frame problem is a good way of illustrating the frame, and you've probably come across exercises like this. There's something called the 9-dot problem, which I think is what Vervaeke uses to explain this. You got 9 dots, and I think you're told to please connect all these 9 dots. It's 9 dots, just like creating a rectangle, that. You're told to please connect these dots with 4 lines that are all attached to each other, 4 straight lines, uninterrupted, And people can't do it, except for advanced meditators, because this is a generalization. A few people who are not advanced meditators can still solve this problem, but people tend to really struggle with it. And there's this marked difference noticed with the experience of advanced meditators. They have a higher chance of solving this problem. You have 9 dots, resolve them with 4 lines. The way it is solved is that you can go outside of the square or the rectangle that you've imagined made out of these dots. Spoiler. and so you end up with this kind of looks like an hourglass shape that goes outside of the dots, because that way you can make an angle that will allow you to get the last two, three, whatever. And anyway, the point is, you have an implicit frame. Well, I don't know about you personally, but most people have this implicit frame when they see the 9 dots, that the outer dots constitute a boundary that cannot be exceeded, and that's never been specified by the researchers, say, or the people giving you the test, and so you have this frame and then you've broken the frame, in fact, or you've changed the frame. It's a frame problem because you must move to a new frame in order to solve the problem, right? So that's your frame. So that's you can, like lots of psych research suggests that you're seeing the world through a frame all the time, and you can see it through a really little frame, like maybe you're seeing the world entirely in, I might be getting my levels and frames, I get a bit confused. I'm not sure they're the same thing. So I'll just keep it with that you're seeing, you'll often see a problem through a particular frame, and then you'll talk to your friend or your spouse about it, and they'll say, have you thought of this? And you won't have, because it didn't fit in the frame. And then you'll go, oh, thanks. Wow, I was thinking of this, say, as like a binary. And now you've introduced this third possibility, and now I can solve the problem. Great, thank you. Or like it's a superior option. So you're always seeing the world through a frame. And for me, the religious is the biggest frame you regularly see through, let's say. That's your religious frame. It's because it's the frame within which everything else lives. And so that seems pretty clear now. I've been through the steps, I think. That's, if that is the religious to you, then you're gonna, well, certainly, since that is the religious to me, I'm gonna think about religion and talk about it in kind of a different way, because I'm gonna link it to this. And that's going to lead me to see the problem that I think Jonathan Pajot certainly talks about it often. The problem that the rejection of religion by our society has opened up, which is that we don't propose an alternative to seeing the world, for example, through a Christian lens. So if you're a Christian, you see the whole world in terms of you. Most people probably don't in this materialist kind of scientific world, I would say. But if you're really into your Christianity, then you will see the whole world in terms of Christian symbolism, or at least with reference to your Christianity, to your faith. You're going to see the best people as people who seem to be doing the best job at behaving like Christ, something like that. And then if you say, no, I'm not going to use stories like the Christian stories to frame my world, and therefore to dictate to some extent what is salient to me, what announces it to me, what I see in the world, because you can't see everything, because there's so much in the world, there's so many details, so many levels to look at things, although maybe I'll make another whole video just on levels, because I'm not sure I fully understand the concept, but it's something like, molecular, biological, physical, you got all these scientific levels, and then a billion in between. Like there are levels within those levels, obviously. Like there are many ways of looking at chemistry, and many ways of looking at physics, and you got physics down to the quantum level and astro or whatever, cosmic level. I'm going for it. Levels. Got a bit sidetracked there. Yeah, you can't look at everything, so you need to decide on some values that are going to to help you make sense of the world. But atheism is defined by its rejection of something like that, really. Yeah, I would say it is. And then and this brings us back into the more psychological, psychoanalytic realm, as a consequence of saying, no, I'm not gonna have a religious frame. You still have one in terms of the way I see the religious, as I've just explained it, because it's just the biggest frame you've got. You still have this frame, but you're not aware of it in the same way. Most scientists aren't really proficient in the philosophy of science, and even if they were, well, if they are, they tend to see this problem, because the philosophy of science is not a whole philosophy. It doesn't explain, it doesn't provide a complete kind of, a coherent scaffold for the whole world. It only provides for the material, and that's, I mean, you can go a long way with that, and you can really, there are increasingly, see John Vervaeke, increasingly ways to meld sort of material research science with sort of more experiential phenomena, feelings, what it's like to be here now, you know. And so, yeah, it's possible that the sort of scientific materialist perspective is actually going to find ways to become fully religious or something. But right now it accounts for like a tiny little proportion of the stuff that people experience, because most of what you experience is people, is you. It's not the material world. Most people don't engage deeply with material objects. It's not a significant part of their reality. I mean, yeah, to deny the part that it is silly too, obviously. The material, yeah, is everything in a sense, but it's only one way of seeing it, I guess. I feel like I'm not doing a great job of explaining this, and it might be because I don't understand it very well yet. I'm confused. But yeah, the problem is that we haven't got much of a replacement in terms of replacement for traditional religious viewing of the world. We've just got its absence, we've got its rejection, and then we've got all this unconscious drive towards the religious. So that's the religious impulse, which is talked about probably by Freud, certainly by Jung. We all, religion is extremely reliably cross-cultural, you know. Everybody's got something religious going on. We seem to need it, and yet we haven't found a very satisfying new, a rich new version of it. I don't know how we would either. Maybe we need another bloomin' Messiah type person, assuming that those people really existed, which I'm open about, you know. They may have, they may not have. Like, I think you can dream up a Christ as a group, or maybe maybe Christ was really a writer, you know, who wrote down Christ, wrote about imaginary Christ's life. So I think that's all possible, although I think historians really think a Jesus existed, you know. Anyway, we're left without this, without much of a structure for our big frame stuff, and so we turn to what we do have, or we unconsciously just have all these implicit frames that we see through. So I'd say most people are simultaneously kind of Christian, most people in Western society are kind of Christian, and also have this materialist bent from science, where they think nothing's real except stuff you can measure, and then or they pay lip service to that, but then obviously live much more according to feelings they have that can't necessarily obviously be clearly measured. And the political, because it's a pretty big lens. You can I think make politics your religious lens, your biggest lens that you see through. You see everything as a power struggle between the rich and the poor, or whatever it is, and you can do that, and you can live a life. It's just, I think there's potential for a much richer, more satisfying life, and probably even I think when you do that, because it's so reductive, there's so much going on outside that it doesn't work well, and so you'll probably find ways to explain stuff outside that. But if you're not paying attention to it, because it's not part of your explicit frame, you're going to wind up doing lots of unconscious religion making, and so that's how you end up believing in, like, some people believe in sort of romantic love in that religious frame. It's like the only thing that is real is like physical objects, but I will attain like some kind of a utopia, a heaven, by finding the right person for me. I just have to find the right person for me, which is kind of hilarious, but I think very common kind of conception of the world. It's very very reductive, and when I say it like that, it certainly seems absurd, but I think lots of people are that's where they live. Or you might find some other thing to really believe in. You can start doing projections, so you can start seeing, this is very religious, it's finding, you can find an enemy, you can find a Satan, I guess, but you find an enemy, and maybe that's like white supremacy or something. I feel like that's something people are fighting a lot at the moment. You find that, and that's what you're obsessed with. Or you can find, like, for example, you can find like an ethnic group or something and devote yourself being, trying to beat them, trying to win your battle. And that doesn't seem great either. Anyway, the point is that I could not possibly posit that religion, and organized religion, but just religion in general, has not caused terrible atrocities. Many terrible things have been done in the name of religion, and I don't think that's just people and not religion or something, because people are religious, that they're intimately interlinked. And many wars really are fought and have been fought for religious reasons. Many. Anyway, there is what I think of as the religious, and I think it's a useful way of framing it, even though I am changing, or I'm using an unusual definition of a word, and that may be a problem. So tell me let me know if you think that I'm doing the wrong thing there, if maybe I should use a different word for what I mean by the religious, or whether other people should just start adopting it. Let me know what you think. That's my definition of the religious. That's how I see the religious in this modern world. And a problem, I think just one problem that I see associated with the religious, if you see it this way. And quite a useful problem to think about, I reckon. So let me know what you see, what you think. Please comment, please subscribe, please like. Lots of love.